Call it to order. Tara, do you do the roll call, please?
Jody Stafford,
Here.
Alexis Boosh, here. Amy Barber, here. Jeff Powers.
Here.
All right, thank you. This is a special meeting tonight, or not our standard board meeting, to interview the 3 applicants that we had for the vacated position on our town council that was left when Tim Ennis moved from Winslow. So we had a deadline of resumes being submitted, and we had 3 that were submitted, so we will do an open interview tonight. I want to explain to everybody that state law went into effect on July the 1st, that any public meeting is now televised and recorded. So we're televising and we're recording. It makes me nervous, I don't like it. But anyway, that's what we're doing. So just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So we talked at our last town board meeting, what we'd like to do is we're gonna interview in the order that resumes were received. So our first will be Josh Pope. Josh is here tonight. Josh. I would like to ask that Terry and Christa, if you don't mind, if you guys were going to the conference room while we're doing, not that anything's secret, but we're gonna ask the same questions and just give you guys a chance, so it'll all be fresh.
The light switch right inside the door, and there's bottled water in there for you.
Yeah, if you guys want anything to drink. Thank you so much. All right. We sit, Josh over here, is that? Josh, would you come up and sit up here so you
In the hot seat.
can be in the video?
Yeah, make sure you can be seen.
There
you go. Yeah.
Okay. We went through your resume already, so we've got just a few questions that we want to go over. And then we wanted to also, for anybody who's here who might have a question, we wanted to open it up for them at the end. And we won't be here all night by any means. We're gonna set a time for 15 minutes total for our
That's a long time.
I know. If you don't go that long, that's fine. And so we just want to make you aware of that. So starting out,
Are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, go ahead. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you have submitted for this position.
A little bit about me. I live here in Winslow, lived here since 2016 after getting out of the military. My wife grew up here, so I was kind of pulled along to get here. I attended a few board meetings when I first got here, kind of got drugged into that. I served on the board, I forget if it was 2018 or 2019. Did 3 years. The 3 years was duly elected as the board exec. Left for personal reasons, and then kind of now just I've kind of got a little bit of weight off my shoulders with some stuff, have a little bit more experience, and just if you need help, I'll help out.
Okay. Anybody have a follow-up? Out of curiosity, I've got it up here, but what did you do in the service?
I was in the U.S. Air Force active duty for almost 10 years, a little shy. I was an RF technician by code in MOS. During that time, kind of became the radio guy. Then I went from Herbertville, Florida with Air Force Special Operations to Ramstein, Germany. Served a year at Combat Com, where I was a combat readiness instructor, so teaching people how to deploy, how to set up a remote environment. Got selected for a special duty assignment with a contingency response group. So if you've ever seen like invasions and stuff, like when we went into Iraq or Afghanistan, that was that unit that would go in first. So during that time, if you guys remember Ebola, I was going around Africa doing surveys to set up airfields, giving those to Transcom, and they would figure out who they wanted to deploy there. So they would go off that package we would do. And during that time, doing humanitarian aid, we'd go down and help ship cargo. So our unit was very small, so a multifaceted team. We'd go in with 12 people, where our sister units would go in with 40 or 50 and move tons and tons of cargo, constantly busy. Really chaotic and fun. During that time, I have close to over 10 deployments during that 10 years. So used to be on the road. I was kind of addicted to being on the road and the chaos. So I kind of made the choice of getting out, and everything kind of lined up. Ironically, bought a house right next to the place where I got married. So it kind of was interesting to me that the further that I tried to run away from here, the closer I came back.
Thank you. I was just curious. Anybody, anything else on Josh's previous qualifications and jobs, or current job?
I guess currently I'm a substation engineer for a power company.
Anyone?
What kind of hours do you work there?
I work salaries, so my hours are kind of flexible. Like this morning, I just couldn't sleep, so I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I pretty much ended my day. Well, I tried to end my day a little bit sooner, so I do my 8 hours. However, I got stuck in some traffic. I had to go up to Tell City after a project's done, go out there and do an inspection, make sure stuff was done, document was out there. So went and documented that because I want to do that before I go on vacation. So I wanted that all off my plate. So my hours can be flexible. Sometimes if I have some personal stuff going on, it's okay for me to go and handle that and then come back. It's just the honor system of making sure you do your hours. So sometimes if I'm busy during the week, have a few medical things, I may work during the weekend. So there's that flexibility of being that, an adult and work those 40 hours.
Alexis, you want to ask anything?
How do you see yourself interacting with the office staff, town workers, and other board members?
One is kind of figuring out what's going on. I've been kind of detached. I don't know exactly what the ins and outs are right now. I'm not too current with some of the house bills. I know that stuff's always in flux. I know there was a house bill back in the day that we had to stay on top of where the landlord, you couldn't give them not the fine, but you couldn't go against them if there was a tenant. So kind of cut that short, trying to figure out what's going on and see where I can fit in. See where I can assist, where can I use what I do now, what I'm good at to help move things along and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I guess, does that make sense?
Yeah, more like, do you see yourself, would you think you're like their boss? Like the office staff and the town worker, do you see yourself as like their boss or like a coworker?
I'm not too for sure how the dynamic is right now. I know before it was more, not quite a boss, but leadership. What can I do to equip you for the task? Let me know that. Like we would have a Monday meeting and it was, let me know what's going on. That way something happens, someone says something goes on, I'm aware of it. It was always your first phone call, if something bad's gonna happen, give me a call and I'll be the umbrella and handle it. So it's not like, I never quite, I don't like that boss dynamic, like you need to do this, you hire someone for the position, you expect them to do the role. No one wants to do a job bad, so it's how can I help you, equip you to do your task correctly.
Okay, explain how you are uniquely qualified for this position over the other two candidates.
Well, I know Terry served on the board for 4 years. I'm not too sure about the other candidate. Uniquely qualified, my unique qualifications is I'm used to design and engineering, project management. I have years of experience of getting certain tasks done within a time frame with a limited amount of manpower. So working in small teams and trying to get stuff done and managing those from during current operations, planning all that stuff to an execution phase, getting a war order, basically like, hey, we want to go here. How do we execute that? How do we set stuff up and stage it so all this stuff can happen? So there's that managerial stuff that I'm kind of used to. And even doing a little bit of that today, like what standards do we need, what parts, what material, what does our schedule look like, and then building buffers in that to make more realistic stuff. Even some of the projects, like we had someone come and do the lights here, they initially quoted that they were going to get it done in, I think, a month per se, or I can't remember the exact number, but let's say they quoted a month. I told them I'd give them 2 extra months. Well, they already pushed to that time. So even given that flexibility, it's like, all right, push came to shove, you had an agreement, a written agreement, you need to deliver it now, and you had a buffer. So building some buffers and stuff, kind of being able to understand like what the workload is and dig that up and go, all right, let's figure this all out.
Okay.
Question 4.
Sorry, this is our first time doing this.
What is one improvement you want to see done in town? How would you move towards that?
One improvement is something taken away from it is having some more quality work standards. Like if you looked at the first road grant that we did, a lot of mistakes happened. The second one got a little bit better. The third one, a full bid package and a lot more details. I'd like to grow some of that stuff out to figuring that out. Like, okay, if someone needs to go and redo some of the sidewalk, what all do they need? How much material do they need for an area, and what forms and stuff do they need? So that's something with what I've been doing now is doing that for work. I can do that here, provide those skill sets. Some of it, I'm not going to be an expert at it, but I can touch bases with people. It's like, hey, what kind of concrete should we get to make it match? What kind of sump? What all this kind of stuff? Flush that all out. And that's just one example. Even looking at, I know we need the big project for the water and the wastewater, being able to talk to those engineers and kind of get a better feel for them. You know, it's kind of, I'm in a different field for engineering, but can kind of understand where they're coming from with some of that stuff. So getting some of the workplace standard, like even putting in a residential yoke and meter system. What's the exact materials they need? How much does that work? You know, is that 2-hour job, 3-hour job? Being able to figure that all out, and then that comes into your budgeting and stuff for it. So being able to be more cost effective. And that was coming from sitting here and some of that little thing that's in the back of like, I would really like to get this. I never had that time just because, well, there was 3 of us, and yeah, it was quite busy.
I have a question I would just like to ask. Previously, you said you were on the town council, and I know that you resigned midway through or somewhere you didn't complete your term. How is your schedule better now than it was then, so that we won't have this kind of thing come up again? I mean, we got to have some reassurances on that.
Well, before I was working part-time as an EMT, I was working part-time as a fireman, volunteering as a fireman, working on a bachelor's degree for electrical engineering. And during that time, I was not a flexible work schedule. I worked hourly, which one part of me, I do miss that, because if I needed to do a little extra work, I could get overtime. I don't get overtime anymore. But most of that stuff's off my plate. You know, I don't work those 2 other part-time jobs unless absolutely needed. I'll go and help with Pike EMS. If something happens and someone needs to cover, then I'll go cover down on it. But before, I was working about 2 shifts over in Vincent's and then a shift over here. It was just kind of quiet, and that's the quiet time I could work on my degree. Everything was kind of silent if I was at the firehouse. So it worked nicely to get my degree done. But
Electrical engineering, what did you end up getting a degree in?
my degree is electrical engineering technology. It's a bachelor's level with a concentration in power systems. So power systems is pretty much what I do right now. So designing transmission lines, substations, stuff like that. So if you think about the grid, that's usually my focus in engineering.
And you finished your degree a few months back?
August 2021.
Yeah, so I'm
Okay.
trying to think what year.
So Josh, how would you say the books for the town looked while you were in office?
Not the best. I know there were some problems, but like anything, you have a few problems. So you pick the biggest sore spot, the one that has the most effect, and you put most of your effort into that.
So if you had to qualify them from great, somewhat great, horrible, or somewhat horrible, how would you rate them?
Above medium, like they were good. We knew there were problems that needed to be handled. Now, there's also, when you think about books, there was a term with one clerk and there was a term with another clerk.
How many clerks?
2. So there was a very, very strict person, and then there was one that was relaxed. And if you've looked back, then you can see there's a trend, a
So
big
do
transition.
you actually know how bad they really were?
No.
You know 2 years were not auditable?
What 2 years? I think I have the assumption of them.
21 and 22.
So after COVID and during a certain term. COVID had different fundings.
But how would that make the
You
accounts not accurate?
had different ways you had to account for it. So a lot of it, what I wanted done was, I'm trying to remember the dollar figure. I wanted a project developed in Keystone, and Keystone at the time was fresh. I wanted a project, so anytime anyone bought anything, it went to that project code. Then when you would go and audit it, it would go there. Now, as a council member, who here goes into Keystone and puts in there?
We're not allowed to.
Now, can you tell the clerk what to do?
We don't tell the clerk what to do.
I had that problem. I couldn't go in there. I could see some of the problem.
Well, nobody would want you to go in there, but who's ultimately would be responsible for that?
That
For
would be,
for the town's books,
the clerk.
with whose oversight?
The legislative body includes budget. So there is that part where I've had those disagreements, like this is what I think is right. That doesn't mean it's exactly right. But the same thing here, if you see a problem with the book, can you tell the clerk to go do it? So there's some of that. And those were
We can't
public
tell you to
meetings.
do it, but we can discuss it.
Yeah, there was plenty of those discussions.
I have one follow-up question. You and I had spoke before about, we were looking at, really like to get if not a redevelopment commission, then a planning committee, something going.
Yeah.
To where we could, we need help with, we need a new, comprehensive plan. We need, and so you and I talked some about if you would be interested in helping with that at one time. And, we've had struggles with, which I think it's just the nature of the office. Struggles with public.
Public
I'm just gonna say that. And I know that was, you shared with me that was a sore spot for you when you were in office. How do you feel like that has changed some? Do you have reservations still on some of the job duties that include public facing issues? And, why do you think you'd be ready to do that again?
One is I've been through it once, so I have somewhat of an idea
We'll let you finish.
somewhat what I'm getting into. Two is having the discussion that a lot of people have been asking for me to apply for this job. So there's that. And I think part of it is having those discussions of trying to get ahead of that, of here's what's going on, here's that. And if sometimes you miss the mark, hey, the mark was missed, we're trying to hit that mark and be more discussive with the public.
All right, that was fine. We'll open it up now. If anybody does have a question for Josh, we ask that you come forward, state your name for the camera, and ask it. If not, then we'll move on. Nobody? All right. Thank you, Josh. Do you have any questions for us before you? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Gabby, you want to get Terry?
Yeah, I didn't know who was next.
Hi, Terry. You come up and have a seat up here. We appreciate it.
Witness stand?
Yes.
Yes,
Camera range.
Yes. Camera.
Want me to swear to tell the truth and the whole truth?
Yes. We would appreciate that. We're gonna ask you the same questions we asked Josh, and we're gonna time it. And we have it set for 15 minutes. It runs a little bit over, that's fine.
Okay.
And then after that time, we're gonna open it up to anybody who's here. If they want to have any questions or follow-up questions for you, we're gonna allow that.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll start us off. First, just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you have applied for this position, why you're interested in it.
Well, I've lived here most of my life. I'm a accomplished chainsaw carver. I'm retired. I have a lot of time on my hands. I know this town like the back of my hand. I know where every crack and crevice is. I know most people in it, not all the new ones. And the reason I applied is because I feel like you guys could use some new blood on your board that knows this town pretty well.
I didn't ask Josh this question, but I will ask you. Having previously served on the board, what do you think we're lacking as a board that you've seen so far? Or do better? What do you think could be done better? What do you feel has been missing?
Well, if I'm gonna go by what people think in town, not what I think, but what people think in town, I think they think that they feel that it's become like it's your way or the highway is what a lot of people think. That's not me. But you're asking what I think people think. That's what I think not all people, of course.
Yeah.
There's only,
What do you think?
if you've been on the board, what you have, this town is divided up into certain groups. You can't make everybody happy. I don't care what you do. You just can't. But as far as me, what I think you guys are doing the best you can. I know from experience, there's only so much you can do. Your hands are tied when it comes to so many things, but people don't understand that. Until they've been put in your position, they will never understand that. They just won't. And so then they'll get pushy, That's just the way it is. With me, if I say I'll do it, I'll do it. And I always finish what I start. I don't quit in the middle.
What do you think, what would you consider your greatest accomplishment during your term that you served?
Oh, for one thing, we discontinued an old dinosaur of a water department because it was just a money pit. Nobody wanted to do that for years, and me and Dick and Jerry or Greg got together and we decided to make the move, and so we did. And for years, a lot of people wanted us to hook on to Pike Gibson, but then a lot of people didn't. But there again, you are in that position and you have to make decisions that don't make everybody happy, but it does make a certain amount. So that's one of the big things we did there. And I feel like we were trying to take care of the streets, and the sewer system was in such a disarray whenever we took office. There was so many documents that wasn't correct. I mean, it was the I can't even think of it.
Operator?
No.
Oh, IDM.
IDM, yeah, IDM was, we were facing so many fines and everything, but we got that all, it took us 3 years to get that under control. And then, of course, we only had 3 years to serve because there again, that's another thing we done. We changed things. We made it to where now our elections in Winslow are tied up with the counties, so it doesn't cost Winslow no money to have their elections no more. But we had to give up a year of our service to do that.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So you had a 3-year term.
Yeah. I can sit there and think more stuff.
Oh, that's fine. What do you think what do you wish you could have done better or different?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember well. It's been a while, but
What years were you on the board?
it was
It was previous,
it was before COVID, I believe.
2016 to 2018 is what his paper says here.
It was before COVID. So
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's right, 16.
We were in the process of selling this place, and we was gonna get another business in town. But then, of course, we got, our term was up and everything. We were in the process of trying to get more streets paved and And we were also in the process of trying to refurbish some of the sewer system in town. Well, not sewer system, but the drainage, storm drainage,
Yeah.
because it was in a bad way. But we didn't have the correct amount of money to do this properly, like you would put it on paper. So what we done is we would go buy scrap metal and we build our own stuff and we make it work. And that's what we did. We, with David and Steve Nelson and whoever else we had down there. I always work hand in hand with the guys on the street department. Always had a real good relationship with them. That's why I say I know this town pretty good. If there was a problem, I'd always take it to them. And it's like I was kind of like their worksheet for them, But if they needed something, I'd make sure they got it. We kept our street department going strong. And Dick, he always took care of most of the numbers in town. And Greg, he kind of worked hand in hand with me. But we made it work. But as far as what I would have done better, I think it's just, we just would have kept going in the direction we was, but we ran out of time.
Yeah.
And you'll see
Yeah.
yourself, whatever you're working on,
We're
eventually,
already knowing
you'll
that.
run out of time. You'll say, man, I wish I could have had more time. I could have got this done. But,
What do you think was the biggest learning curve when you first came into office? What took you the longest to get a handle on?
It didn't take long, put it this way, but to learn how to deal with people.
I meant to.
You learn real quick. Other than that,
Learn how to ignore them.
no, I don't ignore.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I've always been good with people. I used to, when I used to teach karate for Jim Corn, kids, you gotta have a little patience for that.
So you did
Especially-
karate on them.
No. But their parents, their parents would come and sit around the room. And so you gotta know how to deal with people. But that was a good curve. But this is a different curve. You learn how to deal with people when you stand in front of them like that. But then whenever you sit in front of them, it's a totally different curve. And you learn that real quick too. So that's,
So if you just took one thing to do, to get on, what would be the one improvement you'd do?
Oh, if I was to get on your board?
Yeah, what would be the one improvement and how would you do it?
Well, I think one of the biggest complaints that the town has is they'd like to see more maintenance done on our city streets. So what I would do, what I used to be pretty good at, is I would work hand in hand with them guys down at the park or the street department. Not that I would get in the ditch and work with them, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I would make sure that if I see a lot of people every day. So if they would find out that I'm back on the board, they're going to stop me and say, hey, can we get this fixed? Do you know when we can? Then I'll be able to address that with you guys and those guys, and we'll work together and get it done. But a lot of these things go unnoticed. A lot of these people out here, they don't like it, but yet they don't want to come up here and say anything, so instead they'll just stay back there and complain. That's the way it is, But,
Yep, you're right.
that's one of the big things that I would try to do, other than making myself very available. People like to call, people like to make phone calls. I never turn down a phone call, and I'm always at every meeting, and you can just count on it. Like I said, I'll do what I say I'll do, and I don't quit in the middle of nothing. I finish what I started.
So when you were on the board previously, and, you're chosen to come back, how did you work with the clerk? And, you mentioned you've worked hand in hand with the street department, but how did you interact with the clerk and with the clerk's staff and any other people that interact with the town?
Well, we were, camaraderie. You know, I'm not their boss and they're not my boss. I know how the clerk's position is situated. I know what they're expected to do by the state and by the town. So I know I don't tell them what to do, but I don't expect them to tell me what to do either. I expect us to work together, you know, if well, you know, it's just like with the shut-offs and stuff like that, you gotta work together, you know, and then again, I work hand in hand with the street department. It all works together. If you can't work together, especially with the clerk, then you've got a problem. You know, with any business, if you don't have good management, you don't have nothing. You've got to have good management.
I've covered all of them.
We've covered all the
Yeah.
questions, just not in the same format as
Same
they were for the last person. It's no big deal. Anybody have any random questions or anything? I was wondering, I know you mentioned that, that you guys got rid of where you pull the water out of the river and the water processing plant and stuff. There was a certain amount of public relations stuff, like we just had water rates that we went through. Did you do the meetings and all that stuff? Like, you know, like advertise to the public and say, we're gonna switch to Gibson water instead of using those?
Yeah, we discussed that in several meetings. I mean, it isn't like we just turn the water off and turn that one on,
Well,
which you could, but that's not the process that we did.
yeah.
That is the
I was
process.
asking about the process, because I wasn't around then, so I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that is the actual process. You turn that one off and you turn that one on. It's that simple, but that is not how we've done it. It's not how we went about it. Of course, we had, I don't know, probably 6 to 7, maybe 8 months worth of meetings over this. And there again, you have people that don't like it. You have people that do like it, but it was a money pit. We were throwing anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 a year and an operator alone, not to mention all the chemicals that we were throwing at it and all the upkeep, because it was a dinosaur. So everything on that operation was antique. And so you either had to replace it with something new or try to fix what was there. It's just constantly, never ending. And so it's just a money pit. So by changing that over, the way we had it figured out money-wise, the town would be money ahead by switching over to Pike Gibson. But there again, we have no control over them raising their rates. But hey, we don't have no control over the food getting raised in the store either. It's just going to happen. And so there again, you have to make decisions that doesn't make everybody happy, but that's what comes with leadership, you know.
Did you have, I haven't looked real close at numbers during your term. You know, you mentioned selling this building to bring in another business. And, I mean, we've seen, those of us who've lived around here our whole lives, have seen the population dwindle, not just in Winslow, but the whole area. Was that the same thing that was going on during your term? Because the fewer customers we have, the less money we have to work with. That's just, you know, common sense. When you run a business, if you're not making enough money to cover your expenses, you know, and that's one of the things that we look at. How do we get more people to want to live here?
Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody has their own opinion. Well, I feel that one thing that, and there again, maybe none of you agree with this, and maybe all of you, I don't know. But, you know, they made a law here, I don't know, I think it was in the early 20s there, I think, but that no one can live in a camper in town, okay? And to me, that's wrong. If you have a nice camper, or at least a halfway decent camper, and you've got underpinning under it, and you're hooked up to the water and sewage, you are a water customer, you are contributing to this town. What's the difference in what they have over there on the end of Collins Street, all those campers over there? What's the difference? Why are they allowed to do that? I know they're out of the city limits, but still, they're on our water, they're on our sewage.
Yeah.
So why is it okay for them but it ain't okay for anybody else that lives within the city limits. If they've got a camper and they've got an underpinning on it and it looks decent and they're not like a junkyard or something, and they're paying a water bill and a sewage bill, is that not contributing to the town? I feel it is. And I know in this day and age, what are people doing? They're going to what they call tiny homes because it's cheaper. Well, why couldn't Winslow have tiny homes? And then you'd have more customers, more revenue.
Yeah, so we've talked about that before.
So for me, I agree to an extent, because the extent is sometimes, and I don't want to, not classifying all people this way, but you're right. If they'll put it in and they'll take care of it and they'll keep it up and make it look nice, I personally don't have an issue. The issue comes when you have that person that comes in, I don't care if it's a camper or it's a trailer or it's a house, and they don't take care of it. It's like a nightmare to try to get them to do anything with it. So I think for many, and I'm game, because I've looked at putting tiny homes in all over this town. As long as it goes by the codes and everything that was made up, I'm for it, because you're right. Customer is a customer and it's people in town. But how do we, because being on the board, it's difficult to get them to maintain their properties. And then if they choose to just up and leave it sitting there, then we end up biting the bullet for that. We've got many homes that way.
But if somebody has like $150,000 camper, they're not just gonna up and leave that.
Well, I get it the same way.
That's, I mean, those are the kind of campers I think he's talking about, not like,
But
not like the
I
camper we have.
Again, I'm not against
Yeah.
it. I mean, just like the house that I just recently bought, it sold for $150,000. Well, I'll guarantee you, I didn't pay that for it, because they just up and left it, and it was destroyed on the inside.
Yeah.
So that's, and you know that, you're all my neighbors, so you know that. But it's a process of me getting it back to where it's livable on the inside right now, but I've got a whole lot more I want to do on the outside. Just financially, I'm tight with struggling with it. So that would be my question to you, is how do we get them to take care of their stuff once they come in?
Whether it's a camper or a house,
That's the
how did you,
To me,
I'm sure you struggled with that during your term also, what are your thoughts on?
to me, it would be very simple. I mean, it wouldn't be any different than what you do now. I mean, you're not gonna allow someone to, do something to their home that is not, doesn't look nice. You're going to, if you don't already, you're gonna have, an ordinance against whatever it is. So in my opinion, if you guys would make it to where, you can have tiny homes such as a small camper, large camper, or some people do the yard barns, whatever, but you have stipulations with it. But I firmly believe that even though you have those stipulations with those tiny homes, whether they be a small camper, big camper, or yard barn, I firmly believe that people would get on board with it, because they'd love it that you actually said, okay, we're gonna open the gates, and we're gonna let this happen as long as we can keep this organized and managed the way it will look right. I believe the town would explode with it. I really do, because they're cheaper to live in, and we've got room for them. And there's a lot of people that would like to do it, but hey, we can't do it because somebody made that ordinance that they don't like it. Now, that was one or two other people's opinion on it, but it wasn't everybody in town's opinion, or even half of them. It was those, I won't say who, but, in my honest opinion, I believe that it would be a good move for the town. I really do.
Is there a zoning board anymore?
There's not a zoning board anymore, but we still have the book and we still have the ordinances on file. It's not to say that they couldn't be amended. But no, there is no zoning board anymore. There's no nothing board anymore, except the Parks Board and the Community Center Board,
And us.
and us. Which, I have one more question for you, Carrie. If you're retired now, you've got time, is there other ways that you would be willing to work and volunteer with the town if needed?
Such as.
Such a zoning board or a, not just zoning board, but I mean, if we had a planning committee or,
Oh, yeah.
anything.
When I was
like
on the
that.
board before, I
Yeah.
was on the emergency management.
Okay,
computer.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, I was on that, so yeah, of course.
that's all mine.
In fact, I'm surprised that you guys don't have a member that's on the,
We do.
oh, who? Oh, okay.
We didn't for a long
That
time, we
was,
didn't know we
that
needed
was the
to.
first thing they threw me on, Terry, when I got on the board. You're this.
Brandon Truitt,
No,
Not anymore.
who is?
He,
Kyler,
Kyler Henry. Henry.
Okay.
yeah, Brandon stepped down.
Oh,
Okay. Anybody? Okay, thank you.
okay. Nobody here has a question?
Nobody's saying
Nobody wants to talk?
anything.
Must have did a good
I'll
job.
talk to you later.
Okay.
you're welcome to stay, or you
No,
can
you
leave.
can do whatever you choose.
Josh just finally just what he did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you can.
No.
I can sing to you.
What?
Sugar-free coffee.
You're
You're gonna make you sit over there. and see.
All right.
But the other two survived, so I'm
I
sure.
know,
you
I
will.
see that. So we're-
No blood letting.
I do not, I'm sorry.
This is priority.
I have the worst heartburn. I think I might have to eat.
We'll finish.
Drink the water.
Okay. I don't have any. Okay. All right, so Christa, we've got your resume, so we know about your work history and everything, but, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you end up in Winslow, and why would you be interested in serving on this board?
We ended up in Winslow. My husband we both served in the military, and when we got out, my husband got a job working at Onyx in Petersburg. And we were staying in Evansville, which is a long drive. The time change was weird then, as most know, like half the year we were on the same time, and half the time we were different. And so we ended up in Winslow. We've been there ever since. He then a month later got hired at Toyota. So, but we've stayed here, raised our kids. Two we had before we came here with the military, and one we actually had in Jacksonville, and raised her here. We like the small community. I grew up in a small community. I lived in Chandler growing up, and so just the small town feel, knowing the parents of the people your kids are hanging out with. It's always a good
Yeah.
thing. You're not
Sometimes it's good.
paranoid, you're like, oh, what's going on? But my kids were very active in the school, so I do know some people. I don't know a lot because, again, I wasn't raised here myself. I'm all about helping in my community and in my country. I know that probably sounds corny, but I went into the service. I was there for Iraq. I mean, I've done it.
Mhm.
I enjoyed it. My husband and I kind of had a deal. He fell through on it, but one of us was staying in, one was getting out, and I was the one that got out. And then, you have kids and life changes. But I just would like to help with the town because I think we need it.
All right.
Why do you think we need
We do. I will tell you, when I moved to Winslow 24 years ago, our water bill was $40. And I know in 24 years, there's inflation. I get the whole business aspect of it. However, I'd like to be able to help try to pull that together.
Help control costs.
Yes.
So this is a good follow-up question to that then. We talked a little bit about your qualifications and what makes you feel that you would benefit the board and what makes you qualified.
Well, I have been assistant controller at DePatrick for 10 years now. And I do the books for the company, and I know the ins and outs of how this works. I have an accounting degree. I'm not a CPA. I'm more just quick to tell people that, but I do have a bachelor's in accounting. I'm not saying that people can't do it without a degree, but I do think that it does help. And I do have some background from the school corporation on how grants and funding works from the state.
Okay. Amy?
Sure. How do you see yourself interacting with the office staff and the town workers and the other board members?
One of the biggest qualities for me is I have currently 26 staff under me. And their biggest thing is I'm understanding, I'm flexible. I talk to them with respect because if you want respect, you have to give them respect.
Agreed.
So, and I handle that with folks too. If someone were to approach me and say, hey, why is my water bill so high? I will look into it before I ever say like, well, here's why. We need to look at why before we give an answer.
Would you also be up for helping to be the liaison with the clerk, knowing what she has to do? And so, because I am not an accountant. I do not want to be an accountant.
You have to like numbers a
I
lot.
do not like it.
Had to be weird.
Yeah, so
It's okay, I'm weird.
it's hard for me during budget time to sit down, Tara sends everything out like she should, when she should, and then I'm like, and to really dig into some of the state board laws and everything. Is that something that you would be willing and able to be the liaison with us? And, to help explain and to get up to date on some of that?
Yes, and I would expect you to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times what happens is people don't ask questions and they guess. And it's not just you, that's in life. Right. And I prefer the questions versus assuming.
You have any experience with the state board of accounts?
Yes, I do. I've had, when I worked at the school corporation, I sat through several audits.
What was the outcome?
They were always unqualified, which is what
Yeah,
every audit did, so.
Okay.
Well, my first time, I didn't either, and I started crying. I was like, what just happened? And they were like, no.
That's what you want.
Okay, yeah, because we had some issues with our financial stuff when we came in, and there's a couple of years that were, what is the word, inauditable.
Yeah.
And we had to just draw a line in the sand just because we have to move forward so we can try to get
Right.
loans for, for
To help fix-
sewage and for drinking water lines and all that stuff. We got to get that stuff fixed.
Right.
So we're doing everything we can so that we'll look good to a prospective person who's gonna give us a loan.
So how many years are auditable?
Those,
The last 2 years that were audited were 19 and 20, and they were not unqualified. Let's just put it that way. And then they stopped because they were supposed to do a 4-year audit. They only did 2. And they said, it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more if we fix this for you. And And so at the time, the board decided to hire a retired auditor. She came in and she helped fix it to where it, at least, the funds in the bank accounts match.
Okay.
That's kind of why we had to like draw the line in the sand, because we didn't get down to like every individual fund down to the penny, but it, like, as a general, those 2 years are, from what I've been told by State Board of Accounts, they'll come in, they'll check it, they'll make sure what we did was, proper in their terms, and then we can move on. So that's for 21, 22, and 23. And then starting in 2024, I said, I think we did a resolution and said, these are the balances, this is what we're doing, and going forward, because I started in September of 23, so basically that year was a wash as well. So starting in 2024, this is what we did, this is where we started, and we're moving forward from there. So we're on their list of like ready to be audited, but they're super far behind.
Okay.
I called back in like February and they said, yeah, we know. And we're still sitting here, so.
Well, the board called for an audit when they
Yes.
first took over, which I'll tell you something. I'll just leave it that way.
Well, if I am the candidate that they go with, would always be available for you.
All right. So you mentioned, the water bills being much higher now than they were when you moved in. If you were chosen to serve on the board, what other improvements do you feel the town needs? What other improvements do you think we need? The appearance, okay.
Like
And
how people maintain their yards. Not that I'm saying everybody should have immaculate yards
Yeah.
and cut with angles and, I'm not saying that, I've tried it, it's hard. But, I think we all need to take a little bit more pride in our property. And I would like to see that happen.
That's fair.
Even the stuff that kind of collects and then the weeds grow up around.
Yeah.
And I know that takes time.
Mhm.
It's not something that you can change overnight. It's not going to change in a month. It could take a year, maybe longer, but I would like to try and help get us there.
Anybody?
And I talk with my hands.
That's okay.
Not doing it.
Amy's over here waving there. It's all good.
I just, how do you see yourself interacting with the office staff, town workers, and other board members?
Heartburn is really
Stacy
bad.
laughed and I was so focused on Tom.
I tried, I didn't
No,
have
thank
any,
you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
I think we covered all of them. Pretty much all those questions.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, or any questions you'd like to ask us?
No, I think I know pretty much everything.
If you weren't chosen, are you interested in running when offices open up? Is that something you're interested in? Yeah.
And I would still be available if you
Yeah.
ever had questions.
All
Feel free to call.
I appreciate that.
right. Anybody in the audience have any questions for Christa?
Here's your chance.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take the next, I've made a change in my mind
You're good.
of what I want to do.
I would agree.
We're going to take a week and go over the interviews and everything. We have our regular town board meeting next Monday night at 6:30. So we'll put it on the agenda that we will have a motion and we will vote first thing in the new business next Monday, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. All right.
I can't sleep for a week.
I was wondering how you can make a decision.
Yeah.
So that would be everything. I make a motion,
There we go. Go ahead, Amy.
I'd like to make a motion for adjournment,
All
please.
right, I have a motion on the floor in a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. I'm
Do you
serious,
have her
even
number?
after the fact,
Yeah, you can, yep.